Hey, deserving listeners. So I tried to watch this about an hour and a half ago, and Netflix was having a problem. And so I watched this other interview with Chelsea in the meantime, because I was just sitting here waiting for this thing to start, and then it started. So now let's watch Love is Blind Reunion. And in Seattle right now, it's 6:30 as it's starting. If you're on the East Coast, it's 9:30 for you, which I don't know. If it was my wife, that would be past her bedtime. So let's watch. So they have a live studio audience, it sounds like, unless they have taped clapping and cheering, which I'm guessing isn't true. That really changes things, because if the cast members are in front of a crowd of people, imagine that really would be more stressful, wouldn't it?
Say we are sorry we're late. We are no longer live, but we are now finally here.
We're no longer live. So I wonder, did they just do the whole thing and then they decided to just air it afterwards to edit or something? I don't know. So we see, I don't know if you noticed, but you can see Brett and Tiffany are still together, and Kwame and Chelsea are still together. At least they're sitting next to each other, which usually indicates that they're still married. So good for them. But did we see Zach and Bliss? Let's rewind. Okay, yeah, so you see Zach and Bliss there as well. I don't think we see Jackie. Yeah, we see Paul, and we see Micah. We don't see Irina, and we see Marshall, but we don't see Jackie. So we don't see Irina or Jackie, which I have to say kind of bums me out. I mean, maybe they'll come on, but I'd imagine there'd be a lot of questions that we would want, but I don't know. Usually these things don't get to the questions that I want to be asked anyway. I mean, who am I to demand that? But so I don't know, just lower my expectations. And honestly, for some reason, I didn't realize it would be this format. I thought it would just be like a party or so. I don't know why I thought that, but I thought maybe because it's nighttime. I don't know. I just felt like it would be like a cocktail party and there'd just be these handheld cameras. That would be very hard to manage.
We have exclusive, never-before-seen footage from the show. Plus, we'll have a sneak peek at what
never-before-seen footage, so like a Cuties situation.
Yeah.
We moved in, we just got back, and there's a lot going on now.
Yeah, we haven't really seen each other since Mexico, and I know we kind of left like on a weird note, and I think there was like some confusion over like some stuff that was like said, and I know some of the girls said that you were like maybe feeling like upset.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear like your take on what happened.
Okay, so one of the things that the host said was that this season had a record number of I do's, which of course we knew because there were 3 marriages this season as opposed to 2, which would happen in the previous 3 seasons each. Not only that, but there was a record number of triangles. So I didn't know that, but that does make sense. And now they're showing a scene that they didn't show in the regular season between Micah and Chelsea, and Micah is bringing up the topic of, I think, the pool scene.
At the welcome party.
I like made a super unfortunate joke that like I thought was going to be taken as funny, but it wasn't. And in that regards, like I do really regret that, because I could tell.
What was the joke?
I think it was something like to the
Okay, so she's saying she regrets it. She thought it would be funny, and she realizes that she shouldn't have said it. I just have so many questions about that, because why would you think it would be funny? And why would you take a risk like that? And also, are you sure that you knew that it, because the way that they reacted, I mean, right afterwards, he's upset, and I don't know, there's just a lot of questions. So it's possible that she literally just thought he would laugh. I mean, certainly that's the way it looked. If you just saw that scene, you knew nothing about Micah, you would think, oh, that woman that we don't know, she obviously made a joke that she thought was going to be funny, but wasn't funny. But when we take everything into consideration, the fact that it was Micah that was there. Now, of course, Micah didn't see Kwame crying his eyes out, but she should have imagined. She saw Amber crying her eyes out, so she might wonder, maybe Kwame is too? I don't know. So, I don't know. There's just a lot of questions.
Like I do really regret that, because I could tell.
What was the joke?
I think it was something like to the tune of like, I don't know, like cheers, like a failed proposal or something. Like
it proceeded to be a 20-minute conversation, right? It just didn't need to be in that way, in my opinion.
He was like upset.
Okay, so Chelsea is focusing on the conversation as opposed to the joke, which makes sense.
That's why he wanted to talk. But then when he like came over, it was more to just like chat more. And so I feel like from an outside perspective, I would look at that and be like, what the hell's going on over there?
Yeah,
so I
and
totally,
I did.
That's how I would have felt too.
And I was.
All right, so it's good that Micah is empathizing, but I don't know, we've seen behavior. I want to be clear. I don't know who Micah is. I only see what I see, and I'm just commenting, I guess, off the cuff. I'm not providing any kind of clinical opinion about this because I don't have one, but I'm just trying to figure out where Micah is coming from, human to human. And she's saying, you know, I could see how, from your perspective, you would be wondering why we would be over there talking. Yeah, okay. But I don't know. Given everything that we saw, there's just a lot of evidence that Micah says a lot of things to a lot of people that doesn't sustain itself over time. You know, like the things she would say to one person would be the direct opposite of a thing she would say to someone else. And it would be pretty problematic, right? And so normally I would say, oh, this is good that Micah's bringing it up. She's talking openly about it, but is Micah just saying this? And then if she were with Irina, it would be a whole different story about this, how she'd be saying, I can't believe that Chelsea was butthurt about this whole thing. I don't understand why everyone's getting upset. I mean, Kwame loves me. I don't know. Given her behavior, it's just hard to know what's going on. So if I were there, I would ask, can I ask some questions? Because I'm curious about where that was coming from. You know, I guess the question I would ask her is, so when you broke up with Kwame, how do you think it affected him? And if she said something like, well, you know, he sort of said that it didn't really matter. I mean, the way that he reacted to me breaking up with him, it seemed like he didn't matter. Okay, that's what he said. But do you really think that it didn't matter to him? And if so, why would you think that? Because no one else on the show has acted that way. I mean, to my memory anyway. So it's not a part of the pods. It's not a natural part of not having body language. Most people, everyone else on the show intuits that, well, this is going to hurt this person. I don't need to see their face. I don't even need to hear them say that they're hurt. I just know it's going to hurt because I don't know, I have empathy or enough experience, or I'm mature enough to mentalize someone else's mental state. So, and I'm not saying that she did it on purpose. I'm not saying that she's this quintessential psychopathic mean girl. In fact, that isn't top of my list. It's not even in my top 10. I'm very confused by Micah and her behavior because I just have a hard time coming up with a satisfying hypothesis. Of course, I can't even know if even that was right. But anyway, she's bringing this up.
Chat more. And so I feel like from an outside perspective, I would look at that and be like, what the hell's going on over there?
Yeah,
so I did. That's how I would have felt too.
And I was really uncomfortable. From what you told me in the pods, you were breaking up with him. And from what he told me, he was breaking up with you. So you guys were like breaking up with each other.
Wow. So we did hear that Kwame and Chelsea are still together, and all the couples are still together, apparently. So there's no surprises there. And now we're hearing from Chelsea that Kwame told Chelsea that it was a mutual breakup, or that, well, let's rehear that. It sounds like Kwame told Chelsea, I broke up with Micah.
And I was really uncomfortable. From what you told me in the pods, you were breaking up with him. And from what he told me, he was breaking up with you.
Yeah. Wow. Now, who knows? Maybe Kwame could come forward and say, no, I didn't say that. I said da-da-da. You interpreted it that way, or you don't remember what I said. So who knows? Maybe we'll hear from Kwame. But if that's true, I mean, I don't know. It's not a high crime. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. What do I think about that? If it is a lie, you know, I'm not a fan of lying. There are circumstances where it might be justified, and there are circumstances where it definitely is justified, but it's not frequent. And if he did lie about this, I just don't see any reason for that. I could see how he would want to reframe it for Chelsea so that Chelsea doesn't feel like a second choice. And since Kwame and Chelsea ended up, but again, lying, especially if she's going to watch the show and see that you're lying. Now, maybe Kwame misremembered, but that's a long shot because Kwame is bawling his eyes out. And if you watch the scene, and I did recently again, Kwame is all smiles. I mean, he has no idea that she's going to break up with him. To him, it came out of nowhere. And he was crying for a long time, and there wasn't any indication from Kwame that he wanted to break up with Micah at all. I don't know. Kwame's a conundrum too, honestly, because in the show, he just didn't seem to have any feelings for Chelsea. He clearly did, and of course, we don't have to see evidence of his feelings for him to have feelings. So, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And from what he told me, he was breaking up with you. So you guys were like breaking up with each other in your own ways?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, if I were Micah, I would say something like, well, yeah, it was a tough conversation. I would just try to move on because I wouldn't want to get into some kind of argument like, well, actually, I'm the one that dumped your fiance. He didn't dump me. It's like, why would you want to get into that? But if I was Micah, I wouldn't lie. I wouldn't say like, yep, he broke up with me. I just would try to get out of the conversation.
Of course.
I think I would have
And just wanted to be respectful to me.
100%.
We both fell in love with the same guy. And to say that we weren't threatened by each other would be a lie.
I do apologize if that comment like stirred up like crap for literally no reason. Like that wasn't my intention.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think because it's live, they're cranking the music too loud and they don't know what they're doing. Because I'm like, I can't hear the dialogue that well. But Mike is saying, if my comment brought up some old feeling, I think she's returning to the toast again. So it looks like this conversation is a good start, but definitely doesn't, what I would hope Micah would do, which of course it would be just absurd to imagine happening, but what I would hope that she would do is say, look, I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. It was overwhelming. And I kind of knew that the joke was a bad joke. I was hoping that he would laugh at it. And when I dig down deep, I think I was just trying to get him to like me or something. I don't know. And I think I also have kind of a mean streak sometimes. When I detect people are a little against me, I figure out a way to get under their skin. It's not a good quality, of course. It's awful. I don't know. I've been really in therapy trying to figure out why I said that joke. And also, you're going to see a scene when this show comes out. If I remember, I was pretty tuned up with alcohol at the pool, but I'm pretty sure you're going to see a lot of flirting between me and him, at least from me to him, maybe from him to me, I don't know. And we didn't kiss or anything, but there was just a lot of us having, recalled our connection in the pods. And I just want to apologize because I was both cheating on Paul in that moment emotionally, and maybe Kwame wasn't doing something he was supposed to do. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but you're going to see a scene in which I did something to hurt you and to hurt Paul that is unfair, and I don't know, I'm searching my feelings around that too. I don't know. I have a lot of work to do. I don't know what's going on with me, and I'm confused, and I'm still trying to figure things out. I have a pattern of doing this kind of thing, and I don't like it about myself. I think I'm playing out some old tapes or something. It's not an excuse. If we heard something like that, then I'd be like, 2 thumbs up. Or even just a little bit of that. 1 thumbs up. But 1 thumbs up. But at this point, it's no thumbs down, no thumbs up.
Micah and Kwame's Mexico poolside chat. What was it like when you actually watched that?
It was difficult. It was very uncomfortable. But we had that conversation. Mike and I had resolution together, right? Kwame and I had hours-long conversation that evening.
Okay. So, yeah, they've talked a lot. I just have to figure, given the way Chelsea talks in interviews and on the show, that she has a good head on her shoulders, a lot of emotional awareness, a lot of maturity, a lot of emphasis on her own needs as well. Because I do kind of worry, does she deny her needs? We don't see evidence of that, so I just have to figure that there's no problem there or not significant. And so if that's all true and she's still with Kwame, then there must have been a lot of conversations behind the scenes, which would be the mature thing to do, to not have it in front of the cameras. So I think she is referring to that. She's also saying that her and Micah have had resolution. Are they talking about that very short conversation on the sidewalk that barely addressed what really happened? Or did they have another conversation? Of course, Chelsea can be resolved, and that's her choice, and who knows what journey that is for her. But from an outsider's viewpoint, it just feels like there should just have been more disclosure or more apologies from Micah and from Kwame.
You guys saw a little snippet, of our conversation.
Okay, so she's saying there was a snippet. It did seem weird because they met up with their dogs and it seemed like they had a 2.5 minute talk. Okay, see ya. Like that's, you spent all the time to get there and you only talk, so okay. Now, I'm just going to take a guess and say that the rest of the conversation wasn't notable or didn't have that other stuff in there. And if it did, my goodness, Netflix, like stop editing that stuff out. But I imagine that probably wasn't there.
We are happily married right now. And yes, like that was an immature comment. And she understands that. And I believe that she's grown. And I do really, really want her to be happy. Yeah.
And if I may, like, I think that there's something that I need to say about it. Like, there's 3 layers. There's an apology that needs to be said, like.
Yeah, I'm really glad that Kwame is chiming in here. Just be like, wait, can I chime in? So let's see what he says.
Right, it was really hard looking back at that. And being there with my wife as well, that was incredibly immature of me to react that way to it and allow it to go that way. So it is incredibly unfair to my wife, and I'm so sorry, baby. And like, I'm so glad that we have grown so much together. And I'm sorry I let my ego get the best of me in that moment. I'll never do that again.
Okay, 2 thumbs up. Great. That sounded sincere. It's probably just the beginning of the number of conversations that they've had. That's some of the most spontaneous authenticity that I think we've ever seen. For a second there, I'm like, is that Kwame? Honestly, I don't know, he's a haircut or something. The way he was talking, did we ever see that from Kwame? It was always, I don't know what to call it, but it was hard to read. It didn't feel, I don't know, I don't want to say genuine because I don't know who the genuine Kwame is, but certainly that felt a lot more congruent or something. So, okay, I can relax. I guess I'm just worried about the 2 of them. And, okay.
And then the second layer is I need to say sorry to Chelsea's family, right? It's not an accurate representation of our relationship and definitely not of me.
So he did say that his ego was at play, which is interesting. So I think what that means is that he wanted Micah to like him, or he wanted some kind of vindication for being dumped in the pods. He wanted to, I don't know, somehow get Micah to overtly say that she liked or no, actually, I bet you what it is that he felt his ego being fulfilled. He wasn't seeking it out because he did go over to Micah to confront her about the toast. And then she started pouring it on really thick, is from my memory. And then he definitely responded. So maybe that's what he means by ego. It's just like, it was feeding my ego. It felt good to have someone want me, especially her, the person who broke up with me. It was very gratifying. I didn't want to be with Micah, but it filled my ego, and my ego had taken a hit when Micah did break up with me.
And I think a third layer is for all the people who are out there who believe in us, who saw that, and it gave them a really negative light, So all in all, like, I accept completely what happened there. And I know that I needed to grow to get past moments like that. And I think that I'm in a better spot, and that puts us in a much better spot. So.
Okay, yeah. If I were his friend or his therapist, I would have some questions. I would want to ask him, so how have you grown? Or what do you mean by ego? What was happening? What motivated that in the moment? What issues do you have? Are you aware of it now moving forward so that you don't do that again? What are you doing to help yourself with that? But given what we heard, there's a lot of promise in that. There's a lot of, I'm pretty optimistic now about, which I wasn't before. Not because I was pessimistic, I just wasn't istic at all, because I just felt like the season just didn't give us anything in terms of the bond and why they would be together, but I think we're actually seeing it for the first time.
No longer had feelings for Micah. That ship had sailed.
I did not. So little did the world know. There were a couple dates that Micah and I had that were long scheduled dates that we both ended early, right? Like at that point in time, by the time we broke up, we weren't having as much fun in our dates anymore. So we both knew it was coming up.
Interesting. So, And you could see Netflix or whoever makes this show editing it in a way to make it look like Kwame was more invested in the relationship. You could imagine them editing it that way to make it more dramatic. Maybe even Kwame said in an interview, it's just like, yeah, I don't know if I'm really feeling it with Micah, maybe. And that would have made that breakup. And if that's true, maybe even Micah suspected that Kwame actually wanted to break up with her. And in that moment but I don't know, the way Kwame was talking to her just before she broke up with him, how much he cried, I don't know. We have to take his word for it because we don't know. And of course, we can be manipulated by the edit. We could also imagine that Kwame, we saw Colleen do this seemingly. It's hard to know with Colleen as well, but at least it looked like Colleen was trying to rewrite history. And I said this with Colleen, that it would be one, exhibiting empathy for someone so say there's a world in which Kwame did totally have feelings for Micah, or at least significantly more than he's letting on right now. And when Micah broke up with him, he was hurt, but he recovered, and he's like, you know what? I do feel a connection with Chelsea, and maybe if I give that one a little bit more of a chance in the next few days, and we can go to the honeymoon, maybe we'll fall in love. And then as the days progress, he's like, you know what? Oh my goodness, I'm so glad I made that choice. That could happen. And then later on, he's like, I really don't want Chelsea to have it in her head that she's second choice, or that I am totally in love with Micah, or even was. I just don't, it's, if you're in a relationship right now and it's exclusive and you have the style of relationship where you don't talk about everything in your past, not because you're lying, but you just don't bother talking about those things because it's not really relevant. And also you don't want to make your partner jealous. You don't want to hurt their feelings. Then you might understand this, that when you have, in your head, or when you're talking to your friends, you might say something like, yeah, that partner I had, that person that I was with for 5 years, 15 years ago or 5 years ago, I still think about them sometimes. I don't ever want to be with them, but they still kind of pop it in my head, or I had a dream about them last night, or sometimes I want to reach out to them on Instagram, but I don't because I don't want to cheat. And I don't know. I know I'm in a good place right now. I'm in a better relationship, but there's a part of me maybe that will always have feelings for that person. So you can imagine that for you, if you have that experience, that it might be wise not to mention that to your partner. Not because you're trying to hide that, or you're trying to lie by omission, or you're secretly wanting to get with your past partner, but you're just like, it's just going to potentially hurt my partner. Why bring it up? And I don't need to tell them this. It would cause way more harm, and they would blow out of proportion. Even securely attached individuals hearing that, it's going to challenge. Now, some people are okay with that. I think Chelsea might actually be one of those people. She exhibits that kind of, just understanding of the way people are. She exhibits this sort of openness that I think might be the sort of person that would be okay with that. She seems to exhibit that. Anyway, so you can imagine that. So you can imagine that someone in Kwame's position, or Colleen's position when she was with Matt, to be like, it's a conscious decision of like, I need to reframe this somehow. I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to reframe this in a different way because I just want my partner to feel special, and I don't want to put that into their head. And another phenomenon along these lines is sometimes people will say to their current partner, you're the only person I've ever really been in love with. But in the back of their mind, there's a question mark that maybe they're just misremembering, and maybe they were in love, just as in love with people in the past, but they just can't remember what that feeling is like. So it feels like they're in love for the very first time. But they don't talk about that because, they just, why go there? Just like, I want you to feel special, and it feels true to me now, and I want that to be true. And so that's what I'm telling to you. So, we could see someone in Kwame's position trying to reframe it so that Chelsea is put forward and Micah is pushed backward. The way that Colleen did it, and I talked about this at the time, is that I can't remember all the details because she said a lot of things in post interviews and in other situations that makes it look like it would be easy for Matt to piece all those details together and say, I don't think Colleen is telling the truth because even the stories that she's telling don't line up exactly. Now, I can't know if Colleen was lying because I won't know what was in her heart and in her head, but it just had a desperation, a kind of machine gunning a lot of different pseudo facts around to try to deflect from the truth. And the truth would be okay. You just be like, hey, I connected with Brennan, I connected with Cole, and I connected with you. And Brennan and Cole said they didn't want to be with me. And I was like, well, there's Matt. And once I met you and once we really had a chance to get to know each other, I was like, I'm so glad I chose you. You're the best. I'm in love with you. And, I would imagine that Matt would be okay with that. You could also see Colleen being very concerned about Matt's worries about being cheated on and rejected. So, it would give a motivation. But at the very least, you would hope that you would reframe it in a way that would make it easy for your partner to at least accept it, instead of just rattling off a lot of random statements. So I don't want to be flippant about Colleen. I'm actually wondering if I remember all that right. But anyway, so you can see that. You could also see someone in Kwame's position not wanting to acknowledge their feelings before, right? That you might see someone like Kwame subconsciously actually not wanting to be in love with Micah in the past. Not because of Micah per se, but just because you're with Chelsea now. And so you might actually have a vibe of like, well, I wasn't really connected to Micah. It was just a thing that felt like maybe, but my real connection was with Chelsea. I mean, think back. Of course, look at us now. So you could see someone having a feeling like that and rewriting history based on the way things feel right now. So I don't know. I feel like all those things could be possible. There
were a couple dates that Micah and I had that were long scheduled dates that we both ended early, right? Like at that point in time, by the time we broke up, we weren't having as much fun in our dates anymore.
And very briefly, another possibility is that Micah ended them early because she was starting to realize that she wanted to be with Paul. And in his head, he either remembers that or is just framing it that way, that they ended early because it was mutual. That's the way he's saying now. Because we do know that, according to Chelsea, Kwame said that not only he didn't mention that Micah broke up with him, he told Chelsea, according to Chelsea, that he broke up with Micah, which I don't know, maybe they edited it in a funny way, but it didn't look that way. So either he's misremembering or he's trying to frame it a different way. And again, if you're going to reframe it and you're going to try to, tell the story in a different way with a different vibe, you want to tell it in a way so that your partner is given an opportunity to believe it.
So we both knew it was coming up. It just had to be that final step to make it happen. But I think we both knew like our hearts were going in different directions, and there were directions that were definitely better for us.
Yeah, totally. And to be clear, I'm not saying you're supposed to lie to your partner. I'm just saying, because you know my feelings about that. I'm just saying that there are ways of putting things that are not a lie, but are more in line with what you want to put forward, right? So I'm not saying just flat out lie. I'm saying there's just ways of framing things that are, more romantic and more loving, more meaning making of your relationship. Things like one might say, you know what? I think I always knew you and I were going to spend the rest of our lives together. Even though in your mind you might not really remember that, you might not really know in that first month when you were dating that you thought that, but you want to say that because it feels like it's destiny, it's in the stars, and it's not lying, but it's not exactly telling the full story, right? And, the more and more you tell yourself that, maybe it does kind of become true, right? Because there's not data to refute it.
Your and Micah's last date in the pods, it seemed like it was a fairly emotional reaction on your part. If you knew that you were kind of heading in separate directions, why were you so emotionally moved at that moment?
It hurt, right? It hurts no matter what. We've all had those moments where you separate from someone that you know isn't right for you and you still sit on your bed and eat ice cream for a month.
True, absolutely. And maybe that's what happened for him. It did not look that way, right? But we can't know. They could have edited it in a funny way. It's a known thing. When Paul broke up with Amber, he cried a lot as well. Not as much as Kwame, but Paul did cry. You could argue that Paul isn't as overtly emotional as Kwame is. So, could be true. What do you think?
It's out the pain that was felt.
Okay.
Right, and so I think that I'm okay with what happened. It helped me process it. I do think I should have handled the breakup immediately with a bit more maturity, because I think we would have gotten more closure before Mexico. But all in all, I think that there was some pain in it, and that's the way that I could process it in that way.
Okay, so he's saying, I think, that he wishes he would have stayed in the pods a little longer with Micah and had some closure so that he wouldn't have to have the pool scene and Chelsea's birthday party scene.
Something I noticed in that clip was, Chelsea, you were telling Micah, hey, you told me you were going to break up with him, but he told me he was going to break up with you. And Micah, you kind of made a little smirk. You went, but you didn't say anything. So was that not your recollection of things, that he was going to break up?
Don't put Micah in this position. Just say, we all saw the show, and it didn't look like Micah was being broken up with. It looked like, or it didn't look mutual either. It looked like Micah just broke up with you. So is that, what's your story? Don't put, because Micah's in an impossible situation. She has to, I think, in order to tell the truth, she has to essentially come across like, and maybe that's why they're asking her, she has to come across like someone who is taking pleasure or something and getting back at Chelsea, or taking Chelsea's man, or that she has all the guy, this, or she has to lie and say, well, I don't remember, or yeah, he broke up with me. And then she looks like a liar. Like, this is an impossible situation for her. If I were Micah, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to take the fifth on this. Maybe you should just ask Kwame what he remembers instead of me.
Break up with you? You were always going to break up with him?
I don't think I was aware of that, but I don't think it matters. The proof is here,
Wow. That's a very good response. I couldn't have come up with that. So she's not lying. She's like, that's not how I remember it, but, it doesn't really matter, because look what happened. Like, who cares what happened in that moment? Because if all that ends well for them, then good for them. I mean, look where I'm at. It didn't work out for me. I got dumped. Remember that?
You told him you were going to break up, but he told me he was going to break up with you.
I was so focused on my relationship with Kwame, like, the whole time. And I think that is a little bit why at the pool party I was like, whoa, but I wasn't involved in there. Like, I really didn't know how deeply they had, like, fallen for each other.
No, right. I'm saying specifically when you guys were walking the dogs, you actually said, Kwame told me he was going to break up.
Wow, they're really asking some good questions that I didn't think. I mean, is it good that they're asking these questions? I mean, these are human beings, and they deserve to have their privacy. So they're on a reality TV show, I know, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, I want to know the answer to this question, but I worry about them being put in this position. I was worried that we weren't going to get any good questions, because in these reunions, sometimes we're left with a lot of unanswered questions, unasked questions. Even for 90 Day Fiancé, that all the shows, there seems to be that, which I guess is just a matter of there's only so much time, and maybe I just have specific questions that are kind of weird. Also, I heard that with at least 90 Day Fiancé, they film all day long and they cut it down to this very short amount of time. So the question I might have wanted to be asked might have been asked, but they just cut it for whatever reason. But I thought because this was live, then we really wouldn't see any good questions, because the hosts would have to be thinking off the top of their head, and they have in-ear. They're being told things by the producer. So it seemed like it'd be even less likely that we would get any of the good questions. But, this is a pretty good question.
Difficult, because I had written something heartfelt.
Yeah.
That was meaningful, because I think we meant something to each other in that moment.
Yeah.
And so obviously you reflect back on it, and you think the conversation just went, hey, I think we should go in our separate directions. And that hurt to hear right away, because regardless of how little the connection felt at that point, there was some depth to it at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, so the beginning of that, I was like, okay. You're saying that you had a breakup note, I think meaning that he had written out something that he was going to say to Micah. Now, of course, the conspiracy-minded individuals could say, well, he might have written that later because he's trying to show Chelsea that he was going to do that. So who knows? I tend to believe Kwame that he would have that. Why? I just want to believe that he's telling the truth there. But then the later part of his response, I don't know, it's not resonating with me, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't resonate with me, because what do I know?
Yeah.
That was meaningful, because I think we meant something to each other in that moment.
Yeah.
And so obviously you reflect back on it and you think the conversation just went, hey, I think we should go in our separate directions. And that hurt to hear right away because regardless of how little the connection felt at that point,
Yeah.
there was some depth to it at some point.
Yeah, I guess. And again, I'll take his word for it there as well, that he's saying there was not a connection by the time we broke up, but there was a connection before, and having it end, it did hurt. Okay. It does, it's within the realm of human possibility, but it's hard to feel that. Now, it could be a complete product of the edit that they provided us, and if we actually saw it play out in the several hours of footage, maybe we would totally understand and it would feel like we understood that.
In the lounge, I went up to Micah and I was gonna have like a truce. Like, you know what? Whatever is meant to be will be. I really do believe that for both of us. And she goes, before I could even speak, she was like, wait, I'm breaking up with him right now. And I was like, oh. Like, I was like, okay. It was a little bit shocking to me, but like, that's what she said. That's what she
Okay, so we're getting a little behind the scenes as well. It's just a detail. I don't know if it gives us, I mean, I guess it supports the notion that at least Micah did break up with Kwame. Because the way Chelsea said it when they were walking the dogs was that Kwame told her that Kwame broke up with Micah, not that they broke up mutually. In that moment, Chelsea was like, oh, so it must have been a mutual thing then? Because you're saying, so I don't know. I feel like there's this gauge that I feel with Chelsea and Kwame. And for a bit at the beginning of the reunion, I was like, okay, I can relax. I don't have to worry about them. And then I start hearing some things and I start saying, what? But I obviously none of us can know what really is happening and the real connection or vibe that they have. I just imagine if any of us were to be filmed at the beginning of our dating life and then suddenly thrust onto a stage and asked a bunch of pointed questions about the most questionable things about us in those moments, there'd be a lot of hemming and hawing and saying things that wouldn't really necessarily resonate with other people. There's another possibility that there's a lot of depth there, but they just don't want to get into it. They just like, for the show, let's just kind of keep this party line of, out there. We'll just keep saying these things so we avoid getting into all the stuff that we would just rather keep private.
And she went in there and she did that.
So thinking back, do you feel like Micah maybe played with Kwame's emotions a little bit in the pods, or not so much?
It's such a complicated experience, right? I mean, you're falling in love with multiple people, and I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. It's a difficult process.
Okay, so the host asks, do you think that, Micah was playing with Kwame's emotions? And I think that is an accusation that is put forth for Micah, and it's possible. It's also possible that it's not overtly or consciously playing with emotions, but not being responsible for your statements, the way you talk to people. She could have just been unconsciously wanting to get people to love her, Micah, and wasn't really thinking, well, long term, eventually I'm going to have to hurt someone's feelings. Now, there is another complete story where she didn't really connect with Kwame, and she totally fell in love with Paul and wanted to marry him, and then she got dumped. I mean, certainly that's the hard data, the facts, that's the way it looks like. Anyway, so I think what we're hearing from Chelsea is she's saying, I can't confirm nor deny anything about why Micah did what she did, but I do want to give her the benefit of the doubt. You can kind of hear that, right? Because if she was sure that Micah didn't do what the host had suggested, then you would imagine that Chelsea would say, like, no, I don't think Micah did that. But the way she worded it, I think she's saying, well, I don't know, could be, but I want to give her the benefit of the doubt, or at least I want to give her the benefit of the doubt publicly.
Falling in love with multiple people, and I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. It's a difficult process, and, we all cope in different ways. And I'm not saying that, condoning like messing around with somebody or putting someone else down to make you feel better, but it is a complex process.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm reading into it. It's not explicitly being said, but I keep thinking that I'm hearing her say things without saying them, right, about Micah, which we could imagine. It also could just be that I'm reading into it, but you hear it, right, when Chelsea is saying these things?
You're falling in love with multiple people. And I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. It's a difficult process, and, you know, we all cope in different ways. And I'm not saying that, you know, condoning like messing around with somebody or putting someone else down to make you feel better, but it is a complex process.
And remember, in terms of the edit, and maybe they'll get to it, I don't know, that when Micah and Irina were in a very problematic way laughing at Amber for crying after Paul broke up with her at the behest of Micah, and they're giggling and spying on her and making fun of her. In terms of the edit, soon after that, Micah was having a conversation with the two of them and being very stern with them and rolling her eyes at Micah and Irina, saying like, you know, this is serious. This is not a game. I think saying, stop acting like this. Stop doing this to people. Why did you do that to Amber? That's the way it looked. We don't know. They didn't explicitly lay that out, so it could have been, you know, disjointed scenes that they were editing together. So for Chelsea, she knows that. This is someone that was front and center, maybe one of the main, if not the main person, that was really trying to actually tell Micah and Irina to stop doing what they were doing. And the fact that we know that, or at least we suspect that, and we hear her say something like this, it just makes it seem like there's more to it that she's not necessarily wanting to say publicly, right?
You want to address that is misunderstood about y'all?
About our relationship.
Yeah. Or just about you guys in general?
I mean, I'll say this too. Every single conversation that Kwame had after Mexico with Micah was pushing a narrative that wasn't ours.
Was pushing a narrative that wasn't ours. So what does that mean? Because in the best case scenario, I think what that means is she's saying, yeah, what you saw was not great between Kwame and Micah, but what you didn't see, what you clearly didn't care to include, was all the wonderful moments between me and Kwame. There were a lot of those moments, and you just never showed them, or you edited it in a way to make it not look like they were good moments or something. And so what you showed on this show was not our story. We had a story, a reality that happened, and y'all made a different story. Or is she saying that the show edited those two conversations between Kwame and Micah at the pool and at the party, at her birthday party, to make it seem as though something was happening when it wasn't? If it's the second one, that one's hard to relate to, because even if they did edit those scenes, and I'm sure that they did, because they always have to edit at least for time, because people don't talk in concise ways, as you know from the way I talk. And I edit these videos actually as well, because I'm not so concise. But even when we figure that there was some editing, there was a lot of data there. It was very apparent that the two of them were particularly at the pool, but also at the birthday party, there was some pretty overt. Now, you could argue that the birthday party conversation between Kwame and Micah, that Kwame wasn't doing as much, but it was, you know, it was still there, right? So I wonder what she means by "it's not our story." Hopefully it's the first one, because Chelsea has seen those scenes. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself, because you really deserve it. You really, really do.